Hi there, I'm Dan Ellis from EPX Technical Services. This is a webinar on cybersecurity specifically built for the manufacturing sector, covering some industry-specific problems that you're likely to have. We occasionally do these webinars for both the general public and as training courses for our existing customers, so that we've all got something to benefit from. So we like to deliver training where we can. I'm going to introduce my co-presenter, Jack Skinner from OpenText, who is a security specialist.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Yeah, thanks for the introduction, Dan. Thank you to those who are attending and those who are watching this as a recording. So, yeah, I'm a security specialist at OpenText, and what I'll be doing is I'll be talking to you about the threats that you are likely to see in the manufacturing sector. As Dan said, you know, we are here to talk about the manufacturing industry, and reports are actually showing that there have been an increase of 11% in cyber attacks against the manufacturing industry in 2021. You know, this industry has actually seen the largest rise in attacks across all sectors. A survey went to manufacturing firms, and unfortunately, with the rise in cyber attacks, they saw that 1 in 8 manufacturers are being deterred from adopting the digital world because of those threats. Now, the problem with this is that, unfortunately, as the world is moving forward and technology moves forward, those who don't adopt the digital world are going to be, you know, they're going to be left behind. 47% of manufacturers have been subject to some form of cyber attack in the past 12 months. Now, we just don't hear about them, unfortunately. These attacks will happen every day. Unfortunately, we only hear about the big hacks in the media. And because of that, people only think that cyber criminals are going to target the large corporations, where in fact they're going to target anyone that they can extort money from. They're going to target. Now, at AppRiver, our email security analysts saw and stopped 165 million malicious attachments in the whole of 2021.
I'm glad you said and stopped at the end there.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, that's 500,000 attachments a day, Dan.
Okay.
So cybercrime equates to the 15th largest economy of the world. You know, and this is actually $1.2 trillion. Cybercrime has a similar sized economy to our friends in Australia.
Yeah, I pulled some stats off the net about this earlier. The Australian economy, 1.3 trillion. Spanish economy, 1.3 trillion. Mexican economy, 1.1 trillion. And cybercrime sitting there at 1.2. It's as powerful an economy as some of the largest countries.
Absolutely. So, when we think of a hacker, we can thank the media again for this, for the stereotypical image, you know, of a hooded person, a dark room, you know, a laptop in hand, as we've got here, lots of weird writing going down the screens. Unfortunately, that's not what they're like. Meet Kane Gamble. If you walk past him, you know, you'd have thought that this was just a normal 18-year-old man at the time this picture was taken. Kane was actually 16 years old when he started attacking the FBI. Yeah, he's currently serving 2 years prison. Now, did Kane have a lot of experience with computers? Well, yes, right. He's a typical 16-year-old boy. He'd been brought up with computers. He was proficient with a computer. But Kane was actually using tools that were readily available to him. Yeah, Kane was using something that looks a little bit like this. Now, this screenshot, for those of you who don't know, this is something called Agent Tesla. As you can see, it costs around $20 to $100, depending on what subscription you choose. And these tools, you know, they've been around for a long, long time. But you used to have to go onto something called the dark web. Now, the dark web is a part of the internet which isn't indexed by Google or any of the other search engines. It's a place where hackers hang out. Yeah. Unfortunately for us, and unfortunately for everybody really, these tools are now becoming readily available on the internet as you and I know it. You can browse to websites, purchase the tools on a subscription basis, as we can see, just like you do, with your Sky or your broadband provider. If this tool was installed on your machine, it would track every stroke your keyboard made. Credit card numbers would be recorded and sent to the owner of this system, and then they could happily go on a little spending spree. The people who build this piece of software, they offer support for it as well. Just like you offer post-purchase support to your customers, these people have support teams waiting around to help those who have actually purchased this tool. So, what are the steps of a hack?
Oh, before you do it, can I chip in?
Yes, of course you can. Please do, Dan.
Thank you. So it's quite amusing that hackers buying hacking tools can get tech support when they're attacking you. There's something I bought a few years ago. Jack's mentioned this is a keylogger that you can buy online. I bought this little widget. It's hard to see because they've mostly got a presentation on the screen, but there you go, a little thing. If I went to the back of your computer, plugged your keyboard into this, and then this into your computer, everything you type on your keyboard, from a hardware perspective, there's no software on your computer, no nothing. Everything you type on your keyboard gets recorded on this little widget, and then I go back a few days later and get it, and that'll log everything you physically type. And that is a pretty sinister way of getting someone's password, credit card details, or whatever. But where I got it from, it came in this highly professional looking box because it cost me 15 quid from Maplin before Maplin closed down. So it's not just software that is really easy to get hold of. These things, kids can buy them could buy them before Maplin closed, sadly. But yeah, they're pretty accessible. Sorry, I'll let you carry on.
Yeah, no, that's worrying that you could go to Maplin and buy something. So yeah, look, let's talk about the steps of a hack. Okay, so the first step is that the attacker will discover a vulnerability. Now, this could be in your systems that you've implemented, an incorrectly configured firewall, an easy to crack password, as you say, or it could be as simple as that person sitting behind the computer screen. People are the biggest vulnerability to a business, and they are the biggest reasons for a successful hack. Okay. Now, the attacker, once they've figured that out, they will develop a strategy and they will use the tools, maybe the tool that Dan was using, or maybe Agent Tesla. They will choose what they're going to use and how they're going to use it. They then launch the attack. Okay. And this is usually two reasons. One, they either want to gain the data that is on your system, or they want to take control of your system and do something with it to try and achieve their end goal. Okay, now usually this comes in some form of extortion, whether it's a ransom through file encryption, or whether it's just they actually physically take the data off of your network and try to extort you for it. Now, the average time for a breach is around about 280 days. That is potentially someone sitting on a network, sitting within your mailbox, reading all of your emails that you have received for the last 280 days. Now, in the event of a breached mailbox, we call this living off the land. MDs or CEOs or those who can potentially pay invoices or make HR changes and so forth, they're usually the targets of these kinds of attacks. But like I said, the attacker will sit on the mailbox and watch those messages as they're received. They read the messages you send. They learn the language you use and your different mannerisms as well whilst you're writing. When the time is right, and this could be up to 280 days later, they will strike. They send an attachment to someone, which is usually, like I said, usually an invoice, and they put a lot of urgency around the email. so that the invoice gets paid. The person receiving it receives a message from their CEO or their MD saying, pay this invoice, needs to be done, holding up jobs. You know, in the manufacturing world, if a job's being held up, you're losing money. Yeah. They've changed the invoice to their own bank details. Once the money is then transferred, they then split the money up into thousands of different accounts. And unfortunately, the police are then unable to trace it. It just takes too long for them to trace that money. Another type of attack that we see is as follows. So it's called impersonation. And this is a legitimate website. So I was browsing on the internet for manufacturers, legitimate website. Like I said, it had an About Us page. And on that page was a list of, I'd say the majority, if not all, of their employees. But they provided us with some key information. They provided us with the person's name. They provided a job title and a headshot of that person. So I made a note of who was who, and I got to work. So you should all, people who have a Hotmail address or an Outlook email address will know this screenshot. It's a standard Hotmail inbox. I created a fake email address using outlook.com. It took me 2 minutes. You know, if you've signed up, you'll know it's very quick, very easy. Best part was I didn't have to prove who I was. Once I'd created an email address, the next steps were to configure it to make it look like Andrew, who was the financial controller. I added his name into the display name, and I added his picture into my profile picture. Now, if I wanted to go a step further, I could quite easily speak to their sales team or speak to their support team and ask them to send some information on a product that they make or sell that I took an interest in. Of course, Dan, you'll know at the bottom of emails, it's corporate email signature. Now, once I have that email signature, I can make this email look as authentic as I need it to. I have their name, I have their job title, I have their picture, and now I've got their signature. So my next job, send an email into the organisation to the relevant person who I've chosen from the website because they've got an About Us page. However, for this demonstration, I didn't do this. I sent it to myself. I wanted to make sure that it was all good. You sent my email to myself, but as you can see, I've used Andrew's name. I've got an invoice. I've attached a fake invoice to it. Now, usually as I said, a bad actor, they'll put urgency around it, and they'll make sure that that invoice is being paid.
Yeah, to clarify, we blocked out his surname, by the way.
Yes.
I didn't want you to know who it was.
Yes, exactly that. So that is the threat. But the screenshot shows what our email security would do in the event of an impersonation. You'll see two differences. One difference is that we have added possible impersonation onto the subject line, and you can add whatever message you want onto this. We can also deliver this straight into a quarantine, so actually the message isn't even delivered to the intended recipient. The second thing you'll notice is actually this bit here. Where Andrew's display name was, we're actually going to show you the email address. From here, you can easily see that this is from @riverimpersonation@outlook.com. As I said, I created that email address. And hopefully it makes it look, hopefully it's easy for the end user to understand that this isn't actually from the sender that they think it is. So,
May I?
Please do.
Thank you. Yeah, on that note, you need to get, you might have a couple of end users. Sorry, I speak of the email that Jack's just spoken of. You might have a couple of end users who who would know how to spot it. You might have a chunk of end users who know how to spot it, how to spot things like this when it's impersonation. But it only takes one, and that's the issue. That's why we're trying to recommend you do stuff like this, to try and just do everything you possibly can to make sure the users don't get caught. But yes, I am a hardware guy, so this bit is my slide. So IoT devices. I have props with me. I will show you some. But first, this is a very, very, very typical example of the manufacturing industry. It's a piece of tech with XP on it. We have a customer with it's a 300 grand laser punch press. It's brilliant. They bought it about 6 or 7 years ago. It takes up a big chunk of their factory floor, and it's a fantastic machine. But it is 30 or so years old. And that's the thing about the manufacturing industry. A piece of equipment made 40, 50, 80 years ago is still just as good at putting a hole in a piece of metal as a brand new one. Might be a few % more efficient or less efficient, whatever, but industrial machinery holds its value. The problem is, this laser punch press I speak of runs Windows 3.11, made in the 90s. And this is really, really not uncommon. Loads of manufacturing industries have machinery that was made so long ago, and the company that supported them went bust so long ago. But why replace a 200 grand machine just because the operating system on it is obsolete? You just take a few backups and you're good to go. The issue is you got to keep it separate to your main network. That's what a lot of people forget. So knowing what's on your network is an important one, because it's really normal for the manufacturing sector to have old devices. I love bringing this example out because it's brilliant. Criminals hacked a fish tank to steal data from a casino. Yep, that's the done thing. This was a perfect example. It was a convenient IoT device. This is a little temperature sensor that I've got. I've got a bunch of them around the house. They all communicate back to a little receiver in the house. That's made by some manufacturer I do not trust at all. And if you've got CCTV cameras, if you've got a fingerprint scanner on your factory floor, if you've got one of those old network video recorders that you put somewhere in the building that's hooked up to the LAN so you can view the cameras on your phone, and it was made 15 years ago and you bought it off eBay maybe, or Maplin. There's lots of devices that are added for pure convenience. And IoT devices, because they're cheap as anything, you might buy a smart bulb or something, and people don't think of the IT department. They often bypass IT security checks in the procurement process. There was one example we had a while ago where the Wi-Fi code was known to someone, and over the weekend they upgraded their factory floor, or their warehouse I think it was, to smart lighting. So they had 300 new network devices just appear over a weekend. So knowing what's on your network is super important. You have to know what's there. Here's a fun story. And this fun story came from an IT administrators forum that I'm on. And that's another important thing. A lot of hacks don't make the news. You hear about some major hacks in the news. There was the pipeline a year or so ago. This food processing plant that recently had someone break in and change their recipe to contain 3 times the amount of salt it should. And there was a state-sponsored attack on a hydroelectric dam recently where they tried to cause a flood. You hear about those, but you don't hear little stories like this guy saying, on our factory floor, all of our Windows 95 machines suddenly got a ransomware attack. You don't hear about that. But this particular story, they got a load of old machines, completely common, and all the old machines were on their own private network, so they were not internet facing, which is good. You shouldn't do that. If you've got a Windows 3.11 machine or a Windows 95 laser cutter, keep it on a separate, non-internet facing private network. That's good practice. But in this example, a company came in providing a fancy coffee machine which had some important requirement to talk to the internet. I don't know why. Maybe it wanted to let the coffee company know it needed filling up again. Who knows? But they connected it up to the private network. And they went, there's no internet on this. Let's connect it to the internet-facing network. So now they had a device that had the Wi-Fi code for the private network and the public network. I say Wi-Fi code. I think it was Wi-Fi'd up to the internet-facing network and physically wired in to the private one. And what this means is they now had a compromise on their private network. and someone broke into the coffee machine because the IT department wasn't monitoring it. It was just a device the coffee company provided. And they broke into the rest of the network and shut the whole plant down. And this is, I guess the point I'm trying to make, you need to control what devices are on your network. And you need to make sure that multiple departments know from a process point of view that they have to be talking to the IT department about any new devices that might possibly need any internet. And turn off the network sockets you're not using. And make sure the Wi-Fi key to sensitive areas is not known. Simple stuff. But it's easy as an IT department for a pushy person to say, we really need this code, otherwise this thing won't work. That's what you got to watch out for. The last one, this is a fun example of what it's called SCADA devices can do. Hacker jailed for revenge sewage attacks. Yep, there you go. Didn't get a job, so he decided to do some villainy. It was in Queensland, has a computerized waste management system, and you find, here's a prop, you find devices like this sitting in industrial PLCs, sitting in control rooms, sitting in switchgear, all connected to the internet so that you can monitor them. Power plants do this. I think the global gas infrastructure uses this. In fact, that pipeline attack in the US used things like that, industrial PLCs. This guy decided to go in and mess around with them, and boom, what is it? It says here, I don't have the rest of the article, but I read the whole thing. It was a couple of million gallons of sewage released into the wild, into the street, into the sewers, into the streams. So that's the sort of scale that these things can do. But also, devices like the one I just showed you, they're really rubbish in security. So again, they need to live on their own private network. So if it's internet facing, it's called MPLS. If it's on your internal network, it's called a VLAN. So next, management. That is the people who run the company, not just the IT managers, just the organization in general. So what are the different approaches that they could have to IT? You've got the reactive approach, which is best efforts. So this is where an IT person, an IT engineer is doing their best. They're patching the problems when they find them. Brilliant. It's not a scalable solution, but it is very, very common. Essentially, it's I will solve problems on a case-by-case basis. That's what we see a lot of. The sort of more proactive approach to IT management, it's secure by design. And the thought process is, I need to make my life less complicated by operating proactively. And that's how I'll make the workplace more secure and more modern. And so I'm going to give you a couple of the differences between them. So firstly, on the reactive side, the management, I don't mean IT managers, I mean the execs that run the company, the shareholders, the stakeholders. They all think that compliance and cybersecurity is IT's problem, because for many years it was, but that ain't the case. Because as we've mentioned before, some of the most the largest vulnerabilities companies have is the users. You can put all the security you like in, but if a user clicks something they shouldn't or demands access to something they shouldn't, that's it. That you can bypass a lot of security just with an end user not trained properly. So the proactive model, compliance and cybersecurity is not an IT problem, it is a business problem, and it's built into the business strategy. That means your company is investing in training. It is, yes, it's investing in the tools, but it's not all about it's not all about me as an MSP owner trying to say spend loads of money with us. Spend money yourselves on training. Look at what tools you should be using, get the certifications, make sure your cyber insurance is correct. It is a business problem. It is not just for the techies. Next, the reactive model, you buy an upgrade kit only when you need it. That's working, we don't need to replace it. That's working, we don't need to replace it. No, it should be a planned cycle. And the proactive model, it's designed with productivity in mind. And by productivity, I don't just mean fast machines, I mean less outages. But the IT investments like replace the server, put everyone on a training course, let's do some phishing training, let's get some email security software to alert people of things. If your management is being done right, this should be factored into budgets. It should be, your finance department should have a budget for IT spend next year or next quarter, and you should be meeting with your IT company, like us, to come and say to you, hey, this kit is all running Windows 10, and Windows 10's going end of life in 4 years' time. here's our expected spend for 5 year, 4 year, 3 year, 2 year, 1 year. Things like that. Maybe you don't need to be as granular as that, but you should be factoring in IT spend into your budgets. Reactive model. Only look at policies and products when things break. It's kind of similar to the above when I mentioned it for hardware, but it's the case for process as well. You may discover that, I don't know, a member of staff left the company and their account was enabled a week later. Okay, then that needs a process change. Does it need an IT process change, or does it need an HR process change? Could be both. We occasionally do scans of the network to make sure that old users have been disabled, but the HR department should have it as part of an offboarding procedure to have the IT department notified to disable a certain account at a certain time at a certain day. That's the proactive model. Sorry, I should have clicked. Essentially, the proactive model is continual improvement. So for the manufacturers out there, this is things like the Toyota way, Six Sigma. These are processes of learn from mistakes and improve the process continually. You don't just build a process once and forget about it forever. It's continual improvement. And next, the reactive model, they build cyber security, compliance, and technical teams gradually, incrementally, just when they need it. Oh no, we're short-staffed, we better hire someone. Oh no, we were hacked yesterday and lost a fortune. We probably should do something about that in the future. That happens. The more proactive model, partner with people who know stuff. Yes, we're one of those people, so this is an advert, but there's other things out there. There's frameworks you can follow. Have you done your ISO 27001? Have you done your Cyber Essentials? That's a nice, simple one. That's an easy win. There's frameworks available off the shelf that you should be looking into, but mainly you should use us. Yeah, knowing the frameworks out there, getting the expertise, that's the more proactive model. I will pass you back to Mr. Jack, who constructed this next slide.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you. So yeah, look, we're just going to talk through six points to help you build a culture of cyber readiness. But what is cyber readiness? Well, cyber readiness and the culture really, as Dan has said, it starts with you. You need to drive a cybersecurity strategy. Sit down and talk with the right people. Dan and his team. Let them help you build that strategy. Cybersecurity, as Dan said, is a journey. Dan, we'd love to implement all cybersecurity solutions to make sure you're as secure as possible, but we understand it can't be done. Right? We understand there are budgets. Budgets need to be adhered to, but Dan and his team would be able to advise you on what security needs to be in place to build from foundations. But Dan, what does your sort of cybersecurity strategies look like? Do you implement a minimum standard?
Well, just to expand on what you just said before I answer it is, there's loads of stuff you can actually do to your network that's free. Some of that can be done. Have you got two-factor enabled on your LinkedIn and Instagram account? There's a basic one. A lot of two-factor for third-party cloud sites is free. But sorry, what does a good cybersecurity strategy look like?
What does cybersecurity look like at EPX? Well,
cool.
If I came to you and said, right, help me build this.
Well, every single one of the customers that's in what we call our SDA contract, where we're looking after them, we've got a minimum standard that we give them. So we got the antivirus is part of our deal, because we don't want to have to persuade people to buy a lock for their door. We don't want to have to persuade people to get antivirus. So we bake the antivirus in, we bake the monitoring in. But when we meet customers on a quarterly basis, we're normally giving advice saying, this is what we think you should be doing. You've got these holes in your network. You've got these things that we recommend. Hey, here's how the landscape changed last month. You should probably do something about that. So the minimum standard is our support deal's got some security tools part of it. The next level up is where we meet people on a semi-regular basis and we make some recommendations. And the next level up from that is there's a few consulting things that we do. I mentioned IoT a lot earlier. One of the things we do for customers, one of our services, is we do a scan of the network, a complete survey, and we find all the devices. Another one is we try and find every business critical system and we say, what's your plan for this? What's your disaster recovery plan for this? I think another one is we do an Office 365 scan where we look at things like obsolete things, obsolete accounts, or people who are administrators that shouldn't be. Actually, sorry, Jack, could you explain that? Because the product that I use for that actually is yours.
Yeah,
I bought it from you. So
yeah, no worries at all. So, you know, the 365 security tool is a tool that we can run. We build up a picture of the 365 tenant. You know, we'll look at administrator roles to make sure that the correct people have administrator roles, because far too often do people get given administrator roles just because it makes it easier that they can do a job rather than actually fit the right permissions around it. Another good one, you know, I said about the breach could take 280 days, right? And I said that they sit on the mailbox and they watch and they learn and they listen. One of the things that they will do is they tend to build out inbox rules. So they will move messages around your inbox. Now there's a folder they're always renowned to use this folder. It's called RSS feeds within your Outlook. It's always there. Now I'm a technical guy. I've never used my RSS feeds.
Right.
And they know this. Hackers know that we don't use that folder. And they drop messages into that folder that they want to work on, you know, that they want to watch and read. And we can actually pick up any inbox rules that have been created. You know, we can scan for them. So it enables yourself, Dan, to, as you know, to go through and speak to your customers and say, look, seen this new inbox rule being created, ... Was that you? No. Okay, so we've got something going on.
I'm glad I asked. I'm sorry to put you. Sorry I put you on the spot. We didn't agree to cover that, but I'm glad I asked now. I mean, that's one of the things we do as well. We run a tool that we bought from Jack. But you said what the standards, so I'll give you the summary. Minimum level, our contracts come with some standards. Intermediate level, we meet with people quarterly and give them advice on what they should be doing. And the next level up is we have some consultancy services to solve particular problems. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah,
albeit not particularly succinctly.
No, that's perfect, Dan. Thank you. So, you know, drive cybersecurity strategy, investments, and culture. The next step that we need to do is security awareness training. You know, we need to, as Dan said, we need to make sure your staff are trained up. This stat really shocked me, actually. Nearly 9 in 10 end users believe they would be able to determine the difference between a phishing email and a legitimate email. Being honest, I thought it'd be a little bit lower than that. I didn't think we'd be as modest as that, but you know, that's where we are, nearly 9 in 10. Unfortunately, those who said they could were then tested, and actually the results were not very good. It was actually less than half of those that were tested were actually able to distinguish the difference. Now that's a big number, you know, and they are potentially clicking messages that are coming through to your mailbox, delivering the phishing email. You know, they are potentially passing their credentials over to people. Yeah, so then the attacker can log into the network. As you've seen, Daniel, they'll then move laterally across the network, try and gain administrator privileges, and then they're in the network, and there is not a lot you can do unless you know that they're there, and you can obviously do the remediation that you would do. But if they're sitting there listening and learning, it's very hard to figure out that someone's on there. So yeah, look, you know, you need to make sure that your team knows what a phishing email looks like, needs to make sure that they understand what the next steps are if they suspect a malicious email. You know, call Dan and his team up. Let the techs decide and investigate. Yeah. I mean, I want to ask a question to everyone here. Would you all be able to tell me who the top 5 targeted users are within your business? So yeah, that's what we need to do. Develop security awareness and vigilance.
I would also say that we send out fake phishing attacks to our customers sometimes, and it's always fun. Although I must admit, the most fun ones are actually when I do it to my own staff. So that's all fun, just to see if anyone falls for it. Normally, the ones I send to my own staff are things like, holiday request rejected, or pay suspension. Sinister stuff that people are going to want to see. They think, what? They click on it, and then they have to watch a mandatory phishing training video.
Exactly.
Sorry. I'll hardware is the next one, so I'm going to talk about it. I have already covered it a lot, though, so it'll be a little briefer this time. But your systems, this is the digital assets, this is the hardware across the business. I've already talked about the fingerprint scanner clocking in machine, the old CCTV, the IoT devices. You can also find that in your warehouse, you could have those little handheld tablet scanner things that you use. Are they running something modern, or are they still on an ancient version of Windows CE? Often the case, when a handheld barcode scanner laser thing costing $2,500 goes out of date, you're a lot less inclined to replace it, we often find. So check on things like that. But essentially, the solution to this is quite simple. Get an asset list of what you've got, do a network scan, figure out what's on your network and what it can talk to. That's something we can do if you ever want, but you can, the IT managers out there, you can do that or should do that. So yeah, that was all I wanted to cover on that, because I've already talked a lot about IoT. I'll pass you on to Jack again. But yeah.
Perfect.
You can.
So the next one's, the surroundings. We've all done it. I've done it. Shared a file with someone, given them way too much access because, again, it was the easiest option. I've provided the ability to write and delete and read rather than just read. Yeah, I've given them those sorts of permissions. When was the last time that you looked through your SharePoint or folder permissions? Have those old employees been removed from the relevant groups? And have they been disabled, or have they been disabled, and make sure that they can't then log in again? So yeah, you just need to ensure that only those who belong in the digital workspace have access. The next one is data, right? So Dan, I'm sure you've heard it. In IT we say you're only as good as your last backup. What are some of the major misconceptions about backups, Dan? Yeah.
Sorry, your IT is only as good as your last backup. It's I remember hearing that a lot 5 years ago, 6, 7, 8 years ago. Strange. The more the cloud. I know how to segue this into the answer to your question. The more the cloud comes along, the less I'm hearing that sort of terminology. People talk about backup a lot less these days. So misconceptions about backup. People think that if you got a cloud product, it's backed up. And no. The Microsoft Microsoft terms and conditions, for example, same with Google, same with Zero accounts, same with Salesforce.com, Pipedrive, Trello, whatever. They all do the same boilerplate thing, which is say, we will guarantee our systems are active. We guarantee that when our systems are active, you will have access to your data. And then there's always a clause in there that says, but you're responsible for your own data. And there's a lot of ways that you could lose data in a cloud-based system. One of them, you could delete it yourself, and then you could and not notice it for a month or two. And good luck getting that back. You can get some stuff back if you ask Microsoft. If you raise a support ticket, they can get it back. I think it's time limited. It might be a week. It might be 30 days. But they definitely don't do it instantly. That's for sure. Some of those tickets can be open a while, but I would say a lot of people think that because they got a cloud-based system, it's their problem. I've got Office 365. It's Microsoft's problem. No, Microsoft don't want the liability of email outages for the entire planet. So I said you could accidentally delete stuff and not notice. You could have someone else deliberately delete stuff and you wouldn't notice until you came to look at it. You can have someone come in and encrypt all the files. And, well, if Microsoft want to restore it, they might argue, well, the files are still there. You've just overwritten the existing copy with a new one that's full of awful data. And it's the same with the accounts packages as well. maybe they can get it back for you, but they will not get it back for you quickly. None of these companies say they'll look after your data for you. They never guarantee it. So sorry, that's the long-winded answer to the first bit. And the other major thing that always comes up is servers. If you have backup on your server, good. That's brilliant. You should. Just, do you know how long it would take to restore from it? And there's two examples here. Number one is, oh no, the operating system got deleted. Let's reinstall it. And companies will do tests every so often to figure that out. But the whole, oh no, a pipe burst and made the server wet and now it's broken. How long will it take to restore from that? As in, how long will it take to diagnose the problem and determine that it's not going to be fixed? Then order a new one after spec one up, order a new one, get it to arrive, and then restore the backup to it, and then make sure it works. A lot of these things, they can take a week, sometimes, depending on how it's done. And how long do you want to be out? So that's the other misconception about backup. People think that because they've got backup, they're okay, but they never think about how long it'll actually take to benefit from that backup. So there you go. There's two misconceptions for you. Does that answer?
Yeah, that answers that perfectly. And then I suppose, Dan, you'll be probably best to put actions under stress. So, in the event of disaster, what do we do?
Yeah. So this is all about the DR planning. In the event of a disaster, don't panic, because you can do more harm than good in such examples. Some things that come to mind are if a machine breaks and you decide to try and reinstall it, you might end up damaging the original. If the disk was faulty, for example, you might damage the disk. If you end up communicating with the hackers in a ransomware incident, but you haven't called your insurance company first, congratulations, you might invalidate your insurance because they'll do everything they can not to pay it. So I won't go through all the different examples of how panicking can do harm, but I know in the manufacturing sector specifically, it's a very get it done, solve sort of environment, because it's obviously quite a practical environment. You can build your way out of solutions, not so much on the tech side. So the whole point of this is, does your company have a disaster recovery plan? And oh, by the way, if you do have one, don't put it on the server, print it. And does everyone know what they need to do in the event of a problem? What do you do in the event of a ransomware attack? What do you do in the event of a tree falling down a mile away and knocking out your phone line? What do you do? Because I would argue that counts as a disaster, because now you've not got internet anymore. What would you do when you have a flood in an important room? And by flood, I don't mean the river bursting. I mean a water pipe going off. We were called out to a company once where their server had broken. Because I had an inch of water in the bottom, even though it was mounted in a cabinet at head height. Why? It's because it was above the kettle, and many months' worth of steam had accumulated in it. Disasters can happen all the time. I'm not talking fire, flood, and pestilence. A company should plan for what to do if they lose their broadband, if they lose their building, if they lose some critical cloud-based products, and if they lose some pieces of machinery, which can include servers. So there's about 4 areas you should be checking for. Yes. Are you okay if I take over for a sec, Jack, and move to the next one?
Yes.
Cool. Because the next slide is me, which is, we have a checklist that you can have if you want it. It's manufacturing centric, but there's an infographic, yes, that covers some of the main points, but there's also a PDF file which has a bunch of checklists on it as well. So you can see the titles: strong passwords, MFA, patch management and software updates, back up your data, retire legacy technology, and where it's not possible, secure it away from your network, which is the next point. Secure network devices. Train your staff, audit the supply chain, make sure cybersecurity is on the boardroom agenda, make sure it's coming up at director level in your company, and outsource knowledge where your in-house knowledge ends. So there is a checklist that we can provide if you wish. I believe my colleague may actually distribute it to you afterwards, to all of the attendees anyway. So Yeah, it's a lot of it you can do yourself, and a lot of it you'll need your techies for. And if you need any help, totally call us. But I believe that is everything. I would say, Jack, have I missed anything?
Was we going to say about a 365 audit as well?
Thank you. I knew there was something. I just couldn't remember what it was. Yes, Jack mentioned the 365 audit we do earlier, and I got him to talk about it. We can do that for your business if you want. We can do it even to non-customers, I believe. And if you're interested, I would be interested in working with you on that and showing you what your environment is like. It's normally pretty eye-opening to a lot of people. So let us know.
Yeah. And even if it's just a sanity check, then, you know, it helps. It certainly helps.
Yeah, I mean, if you do it with us and you find one thing you can do better, brilliant. Then it's worth the time. Let me see. Yes, that was the last slide. It is Q&A time. If there's any questions, I shall be lingering for a little while. So if anyone has anything they want to know, ask away. I believe that we have a chat function within Teams. You're most welcome to use it. If not, no problem. I shall linger for a moment. Are there any closing notes from yourself, Mr. Jack, while we wait for the rush of questions?
No, I suppose I want to thank you for inviting me to talk. Hopefully, we provided a little bit of information to those who attended and those who are recording. And if, like you say, if someone can just take away one thing away from this webinar, then it's been a great success. So
cool. Ooh, I like that question. Yes, good security forums. Oh man, that's a really interesting one, because a lot of the ones I'm involved in, they're MSP specific. The security forums I'm in, because I had a lot of presentations given to us over time with security, but it was designed. The target audience was MSPs like ourselves. For security forums, I am on a few IT administrators Facebook groups where you're talking with other IT department heads. However, not everybody has the same definition of what good tech support is and what good security is. So I might argue to signpost you towards some security frameworks instead. And the basic one is Cyber Essentials. Everyone knows about Cyber Essentials. So I would start with that one. But I know you, I know your network, and I know you've already looked into that. So I would instead say NIST, N-I-S-T. Actually, what does that stand for? I've never asked. National Institute of Standards and Technology. There you go. NIST is essentially more in-depth than Cyber Essentials, popular in the US and slowly moving over to the UK. So I recommend NIST as a framework and Cyber Essentials as a starter framework to everybody else. So apologies, I couldn't answer a strong question about forums, but surprisingly, Facebook groups for IT admins are quite good, but there's no quality control in there. That's the only concern. I've just seen another question. In terms of impersonation as well as training staff, do companies also raise awareness among their clients? When you say do companies raise awareness among their clients, like, for example, Ria, would your company tell your customers to look out for it? Is that what you're asking? Because if so, you can, but it could be a bit of a losing battle if you're trying to tell all of your customers, if you ever see an email from me, look out. That is a bit of a concern. It's mostly companies should always train internally to their staff members to look out for this kind of thing. You see the likes of Amazon and Barclays and these major organizations trying to tell their customers, if you hear from us, we will never call you and ask you for your details. But still, people get calls from strangers and give their details away. So you can do what you can to some extent. It's not your responsibility, but if you can do it to help, great. But training your own staff and getting your customers to train their own staff is really valuable. just an example of one of the things I've done to try and limit the risk of impersonation fraud. I don't know if I should be admitting this on a webinar that will exist on the web as a YouTube video of this is how I handle my security, but here it is. Whenever we want a new payee adding, or whenever we want to change the payee details of a supplier, so there's the risk we're going to pay a different person, it has to be confirmed in person. It's inconvenient to my staff, but the person asking and the finance people, they have to meet. They have to talk to each other. Yeah. And we've got a little form with a signature box and everything, just so we know who's accountable for that decision. Because I refuse to trust email, because either they've legitimately compromised my email account, which would be horrifying, or they've set up a fake email account that looks similar to me. And in either of those instances, you can't stop. Well, you can stop them breaking into your email account, but you can't stop someone setting up a completely separate account. I use the tech that Jack was talking about earlier to try and help the users understand if they're getting scammed. But user awareness. That was a long-winded answer to a question. Just a side note on manufacturing. Manufacturing and construction are massive targets for this kind of fraud because of the sheer amount of money they're authorizing. And everyone knows in the manufacturing industry, you go after the purchasing manager, because the purchasing manager is always finding new suppliers because they want to know that a coil of mild steel 3 foot wide costs this much from them and this much from them. They're always swapping and changing suppliers to try and get better prices. So it's not surprising to see a purchasing manager continually sending messages to the finance team to say, add this new person. So meet in person to do it. There we go. I hope I've answered that question. Sorry, it took a long time of blather to do it, but any more? I think they would have come in if there were. Well, I will turn off the screen share then, because I believe that will conclude the webinar for today. Any questions, you should be able to email us or contact your account manager if you're a customer, or our main contact info is all on epx.co.uk. So any questions, just get in touch. And in the meantime, we will be sending out the checklist I spoke of afterwards, and this whole webinar will be put up on our website as a video for your if you want to come back to it later.